Mm.
I fucking love that. Oh, so ridiculous. All right, what do we got here? What did I forget this morning? Oh, we have audio. There's no echo. I got the headphones at the right volume. We're on the right profile. We're streaming. I linked it. I put it in the topic. Uh, I'm alive. I have coffee. I have water. Details. Fucking don't I update iOS in the middle of the stream? Yeah, I think we did everything. I woke up this morning and had a message from my ma that she was sending me a copy of a book that she had recommended a year ago. Oh wow! New year, new Jake Carter in the hip hop Discord. Oh, I probably shouldn't read this aloud. I'm not supposed to. Anyhow, we'll pass on by that. But yeah, I got my ma like watched the stream, the one where I said all this very uncomfortable shit about myself, and then told me she was sending me a book about grammar called Eat Shoots and Leaves because I don't use enough semicolons. And I had actually bought this book the last time she recommended it to me. Uh, so it's really nice of her to send me a book because the grammar is very suspect in this work. But I already have it. And so I wrote her back. I'm like, thanks. I already have this book. I just think semicolons are for chumps. And I really do believe that. Fuck that punctuation. But super nice of her to try and assist with this grand work with that. Maybe I'll reread it because honestly, like, I really ought to just sit down and I linked this show to everyone, saying that this would be the new Harry Potter, but I spelled Harry as Harry, you know, as in, I'm sure that there's at least one gay porn star called Harry Potter or Harry Frotter or whatever there. So shout outs to Leroy1414. He's the first person to come through in the chat, asking how I'm doing today. I'm doing just well. I was able to deal finally with the problem of having too much whiskey in my house by drinking the rest of it, and now I just need not to buy more whiskey. I actually had a fucking amazing day yesterday, like one of the best days of the year, and like there are 3 left, so try and top that. Then I'm seeing Smithy9 underscore up in the chat today. Shout out to Smithy right there. Yeah, happy. Yeah, I just had a really good day. All I did was like hang out at my girl's house, and we made pumpkin bread and cooked some omelets and fucking played this board game that I really like called Tyrants of the Underdark. Just if you don't know, I run a board game club in New York City, and I think if you look on my YouTube channel, you can see the collection of board games. Holy fuck, serious case of acquisition syndrome or whatever there. I just have so many of these games. It's not even funny, but it is a little bit funny. But yeah, like I'm just super happy with that girl. I'm glad she does not watch the stream because she just recently lost this pink hat. Not one of those pink like women's march hats, but like just a regular old pink hat. And she's been looking all over for it there. And she got me a hat for Festivus, which I was really happy about. So I have stealthily ordered her a replacement pink hat that's very similar to the one that I have. And I'm going to just sneak it on her at some point there. I hope she likes it. But yeah, just having like a really good day in general. I just really like hanging out with her, and she's like a dog, and it's like the most ridiculous dog that I've ever met in my life. That dog like constantly wants to lick everyone on like a sex offender type level, right? That dog will not stop. You can like push the dog away, and it's like, no, let me lick you, and just an aggressively friendly dog. It's fucking crazy, but yeah, I had a really good day. And if you look, I like last night I fucked up intermittent fasting because I was like drinking whiskey, and I'm like, all right, like, but because everything in my refrigerator, it's like a pit bull border collie mix there, and border collies are just amazing dogs. Pit bulls are like super friendly; they just eat children from time to time, and neither of us have any children for the pit bull to eat, so no problemos. But yeah, that dog is In fact, I love dogs, right? And when I first met this dog, I was like, I'm a little weirded out by how friendly this dog is. But the dog has been like that every single time. And, you just, there's a life lesson there, um, in that if you choose to be like aggressively friendly to people, you will put a lot of people off initially, because people are like, why do you like me so much? I don't like that, right? But over time, people will come to find it's like, oh yeah, this is just like a really nice person, and it'll work out. I had that problem a lot in dating, where I'm usually pretty nice to women that I'm dating. Like I'm not a big fan of that like negging and like playing that sort of do I like you or do I not like you game. And like some women definitely need to have that game played. Absolutely. Like it is not a relationship for them without that game. And like I quickly learned that I was just not going to do well with these women. I like, like hitting people up with surprises and stuff like that and doing nice things for them, and generally being supportive and so forth. It's weird. If you watch the other show, you would think that I'm like the worst person, which is true, But like, I try to balance that out by being really nice to all the people in my life that I give a shit about. So it's, it's like a fine line there, but really like, it's weird too, because like, I'm not encouraging people just be like aggressively friendly, because like I respond pretty poorly to that with people. I'm like, well, what the fuck? What do you want from me? And I would have like a really difficult time doing it myself. But that dog has like totally won me over time, and it made me think about people who were just always friendly all the time. Usually not people in New York City, because those people get eaten alive here. But and how like over time I just kind of find out that they were good people. All right, but what do we got here? Yeah, I think it's about time that we do this. So yesterday I was too torn up to really do a good job. We only edited for like an hour and a half. So I would like to make up for a little bit for lost time today. But so we're going to start by rereading this chapter 34. For those of you who have never been in on this before, a few different things. Like one, I think next week we're going to make a promotion on Reddit's self-promotion Saturday for the science fiction community there. I've been talking up myself a little bit in like a few writers' discords. I'm going to start trying to link it there. I really want to start growing the stream, because I'm very happy with the stream as a product, right? Just as like something to sit down and listen to. I think we've done a fair amount of work to get it to be something that is relatively comprehensive. We're doing a good job of like having it every single day. And I'm doing a little better at not just saying aggressively awful things just to say them. I'm still going to slip up from time to time. For those of you who don't know, I've like been in pirate radio for more than 20 years at this point. And that's just a core part of my identity. But again, I hope we can balance it out by like actually being nice to people in the stream and trying to help them with their projects and giving whatever small advice I can. I had an interesting time going into the writer's block Discord. This is a Discord for writers where they are very insular. They're a relatively large Discord, and if you go into their thing, they have like pretty aggressive moderation. Like if you want to talk about books, like other books, you have to be in a book specific channel. And if you want to talk about writing, you have to be in a specific channel, which I'm not a big fan of aggressive content moderation. I think almost always it has the effect of stifling conversation. And I'm not a big, like you'll see, I barely do anything to moderate my own chat. From time to time, we'll have like crazy alt-right motherfuckers coming through here, just spamming like the Holocaust wasn't real or whatever nonsense there. And in general, like I don't ban those people. I'm just like, what? It doesn't make a lot of fucking sense, Like I try to engage with them on a logical level, and hopefully they'll just fucking get it together or go away. I'm small enough that I don't have like any really pernicious or persistent trolls or whatever there, but you'll see the way that I deal with them once we get to that point, because it's coming as the stream is growing there. But yeah, so I found that they were very like insular in that way. And then I started talking with them about the publishing industry, not like telling anybody, hey, I've been, working in things associated with the publishing industry for like a decade. I know a ton of people on a personal level who work in publishing, and I go to a lot of science fiction conventions every single year. Just at Worldcon last year, I don't do like a ton of networking at them, but I have a pretty good idea of how things work. And let's respect the S word out of you for that. I gotta turn off the filters. I really think you can just curse in chat. I think that timeout thing is like 5 seconds. I just thought it was funny to constantly spam people about Linux. So anyhow, I have an okay perspective on what the industry is like, but I'm not extremely successful. And I was talking to these people like a little bit about the value of having contacts and going to conventions. And they could not wait to tell me that, in fact, the publishing industry had changed, and that now unique voices had all the power and everything. And I'm going to tell you right here that I was nice to those people. I was like, oh, okay, you know, like everybody's got their own perspective on this, but I would encourage you to go to conventions and talk to people. That's a crock of dog shit, right? The publishing industry has not changed in that regard. And in fact, no industry has changed in that regard. If you want to start from nothing and be really successful, you are going to need people to help you on the way, unless you are a prodigy, right? One of the examples that they brought up to defend their position was the author of Kafka on the Shore. Oh my God, why am I blanking? His name is in here somewhere. It was kind of funny. So Murakami basically ran a jazz bar until he was like 29 or 31. And then he was sitting at a baseball game and he realized, watching somebody make a double play, he's like, I could write a novel, which is exactly the kind of weird non sequitur jump that is in every single one of his books ever. So he wrote a novel and submitted it to the only contest that would accept a work of that length, and he won. And then he won this book award and became nationally famous, and just sort of like fell ass first into the success without having to do a lot of the work that most people have to do to gain recognition. That's one dude, right? And that guy is an extremely unique viewpoint. His voice is like not much like anybody else. And he has like some genuine talent and a lot of drive, and he spends a lot of time on writing. Even if his books are not, I want to say like a lot of them are kind of structural messes and don't make a ton of sense. There's still like some beautiful language in there, even in the parts where he gets really indulgent. So he has like a unique talent. The people I was talking to do not have that unique talent. And I would offer that I don't have that unique talent. If I did have it, I would sell a lot more books. So unless you have this genius level unique talent, you have to put in the work. And it's a lot of work. It's a lot of talking to people. It's a lot of going to conventions that you don't want to, talking to people that you might not be interested in, and realizing that they actually have interesting things about them, and really getting out there and making a name for yourself in a very crowded industry where everybody is trying to do the exact same thing. And I would argue you can apply this to anything where you would like to have success, especially music, which is so much networking. At this small level of doing things, before you gain any recognition, and most people will not gain significant recognition at any point in their careers, and they need to stay with their day jobs, which is why I have a day job. But at this small level, it really matters so much more who you know than what you do, right? Like you'll have a very difficult time putting out a piece of dog shit and getting people to like it, but you never know what people are going to like. Some people really like dog shit. Some people would step in dog shit all day long and like, get more of it to me, you know? There's something for everybody out there. That's just an interaction that I had recently. And I'm saying that as I'm going to have to do more of the difficult work of trying to sort of put myself out there and get other people interested. Like I said, like right now I'm trying to get to 100 followers on YouTube without cheating. And you can cheat at any of this shit, right? You can just throw money at something, and I could have 20,000 YouTube followers tomorrow if I wanted to spend about $300 or $400 on doing it. I don't want to do that, right? I really have never been underhanded with the marketing of any of these books. I've never done any like direct mailing or shielded anywhere or whatever. I want the work to succeed on its own value. So let's see. Leroy is asking, what other platforms do I stream on? So I use a program called Restream. There it is. Fancy Scientician is here. Now we can begin the stream in earnest. Shout outs to Fancy Scientician. Are you Hogward or are you another cat on the JRE Discord? So I stream this to YouTube, DLive, Mixer, Periscope, Facebook, and Twitch. I use a service called Restream.io, which is free, which basically just remuxes your signal to a bunch of platforms. It can't stay free forever. It's a really, really good service. And definitely, if you want to stream to a bunch of different platforms, it's basically taking this stream and multiplexing it to several other platforms. And it used to be shitty. It used to be you would get all kinds of clicks and pops in your audio. And just because different services need different keyframes and other stuff, but they've really shorn it up, and now it's fantastic. And that's the same thing that I use to get all of the chat in one window right there. So yeah, if you ever want to know anything about streaming, I'm much more of an expert at sort of live streaming than I am at editing. Like I have a pretty sound understanding of it, and I've been able to monetize my other stream and have it pay for itself, and have like a few hundred people on Patreon, and I get decent Streamlabs donations every week. Like I've actually been much more successful with pirate radio than I may ever be with editing or with writing, despite having put like so much more time into writing. Like literally, I put 2 to 4 hours every week into that show. Like, and some of that is just like putting together a playlist. But I put at least 20 hours a week into writing, and you can see it every morning that I'm here. But what you don't see is like the other time that I'm spending like assembling all these files and putting up like the blog posts for them and talking to people and trying to make inroads into communities and get people to give a shit about me as a person so that they'll take a stake on writing. Because I will tell you, I've done like a lot of things to promote writing in my time, like everything from just posting it like on subreddits that are pertinent, or doing book giveaways and stuff on Amazon, to literally like standing in Union Square and setting up a little table and just handing away books and being like, have a book, totally for free, and talking to people there and being like, yeah, this book is about such and such. And I will tell you that it is so difficult to get people to read your book if they don't know you as a person, right? The last thing somebody wants is the task of having to read something. Like, just so few people read at this point, right? Just because the internet saps so much of their creative energy that they would use to like read a book and visualize this amazing scenario. And there are fewer readers every year coming out of high school. So I do think it's a little of a dying craft, but man, you got to really legwork to get this shit out here, which is why you see me every morning out here streaming editing. Because if I have to do it anyway, I might as well try and turn it into some kind of an opportunity to reach a new audience. And like already, you can see like a bunch of, I didn't know any of you guys before this happened outside of Hogward and like Spathiwa. But yeah, thank you for being a part of this right here. So Fancy Scientician says, I gotta make a coffee. My mouth is gravid with feces. Wow. Well, I guess, we were talking about the people who love dog shit earlier, and the proof is in the pudding. And by the pudding, I mean that guy's mouth. Okay. So yeah, a little warm up by just telling you the shit that's going through my mind right there. I'm going to continue trying to make inroads at some of these servers. And like eventually my goal with any community that I enter, like I've done this to like a few different places. Like I'm a moderator now in the JRE Discord, and like I run rap contests for my other show. And I like made inroads and made friends and stuff like that with the hip hop Discord. And just about any social group that I get into, I try to be a part of it and engage with people and do some kind of media thing within that group that's useful, like running a rap contest or hosting a stream or just chatting there and like adding in person. I'm not a big fan of trying to advertise to communities that you're not a part of, because I find advertising detestable. I do not like people who advertise. I am interested in like somebody I give a shit about, like them being like, hey, check out this thing that I'm doing. Like, I don't give a shit about football, for instance, and I definitely don't give a shit about people playing Madden. But there's this guy in the GRE Discord who has like a Twitch stream where he just basically plays Madden, and I like that guy. So whenever he links it, I like pop in and say hi and everything, even though it has nothing to do with me, because I like that guy and I want him to succeed. And that's my modus operandi for trying to promote this thing. So yeah, if you think of people who you think would like watching this thing, feel free to let them know about it. But by no means like spam anybody or anything. I'm really trying to do this on the up and up, because, and part of it is because the like creepy aspects of advertising and everything, I'd be really good at. Right? I just, if I wanted to go all the way to the dark side, Jesus, look the fuck out, because I would do every underhanded thing in the book. But at the end of it, I would just be like, oh well, here's some other people I conned. You know what I mean? And I don't, I don't want to go that route. And it's tempting too. With every like book I put out, where I'm like, this book is fucking amazing. You know, like Arcanist, Master Arcanist came out, and I was like, this is so good. You know, I love hearing about this old wizard wandering around, and it's not like other stories that are out and everything. I really enjoy it. And I released that book, and I think it has like maybe like 2 reviews on Amazon, or there's like 6 reviews on Amazon right now. It just did not make much of a splash. And I didn't do some of the legwork to promote it. Like I didn't reach out to reviewers or anything like that. It's relatively short. And I think I like the cover, but we got to admit, probably that's a bad cover. You know, I think it looks dope, but it's not a book that people just pick up and be like, ooh, what's this? Like the temporary cover that we have for Gravid right here. People like this one. Let's take a look there. Let's take a look. So you can go to this little website right here. You can see all my covers. There's the Arcanist cover right over here. I really like that. I made it for free. You know, this is a John Joseph Arts, I think, is the artist of this lithograph. Yeah, probably this could use some more. Anyhow, but if we look at Gravid over here, which you should definitely be, if you like this stream, you should definitely check out the Gravid thing. Yeah, just this very like plain, two-toned, black and white cookie type thing. People have really liked this so far. If we stick with this design for the cover, which we probably shouldn't, but we'll definitely do something to make this ball like a little bit more interesting. I bet I know this guy Random D, who does like these amazing tessellated 3D things. I bet he would be willing to like make something amazing for that, because he actually like fucks around in Blender or Cinema 4D and does like some amazing shit. Let me talk with him actually. Like that would be so cool. Okay, anyhow. But he's super busy, like works for Google and has a bunch of kids and stuff like that. So anyhow, I'm just thinking aloud right here. All right, well, let's get down to what we're really all here for, and that is the editing of this book. So Gravid is the story of Freya Jokla. She's a young woman who has become very depressed after the death of her father. In fact, so depressed that after getting beaten up at her school, she decides to end her life by drowning in a river. As she's attempting to drown herself, she's surprised by the crash of a meteorite into a sandbar near her, and falls right into the river. But she manages to live through the rapids and investigates this meteorite, only to find that it is a very peculiar meteorite. She brings it home, and it cracks open, revealing at the center a 25 millimeter violet sphere. And if you haven't done your research on meteorites, I will tell you that that just does not happen. There's never like a pit at the core of a meteorite in any meteorite that I've observed. And scientists will agree with me here. So being a 16-year-old girl, she's like, huh, what the fuck? And she actually does some work to investigate this thing and finds out that it's definitely not a natural phenomenon. So she's just been carrying this alien artifact around in her pocket for weeks at this point, and has decided to never tell anybody about it. And we open here with, so she had some issues with her mother, who took away her medication, which was Lunesta, because she was suffering from severe insomnia. And for about 3 days after losing the Lunesta, She was just not able to sleep well, starting to hallucinate a little bit. And as part of getting her ass kicked, her mother has been making her go to a Krav Maga class. And her Krav Maga instructor, Vitko, who is, I think he's like a Polish Israeli type guy, has instructed her, like, just run until you're tired enough to sleep every night. And so she's been running like 5 miles a night for every night this week. And finally, like a Sunday morning, she's like, I'm hungry, as you would be if you ran all that distance there. So she's just gone to this diner, ordered this gigantic breakfast, and has been invited to hang out that night with Dan Gregulis, who's a high school senior in her Krav Maga class, his friend Cameron Kowalski, and at the house of a guy named Brad Klein. But, while she's in the middle of getting invited, she has left behind a copy of a book written by her psychiatrist called The Fragile Phoenix. And now realizes, oh shit, I left behind they're going to know that I'm in therapy and that I'm fucking crazy. And she had, to make matters worse, this guy Dan Gregulis had asked her about the book, and it's like, hey, what's that all about? She's like, oh, it's just a fantasy. So now she feels bad for having lied to him, and she thinks she's going to get found out there. So yeah, really some Lifetime movie type shit right here in the stream. So usually what we're going to do is we're going to read through line by line, and we're going to try to pick out things that don't fit, or places where the language is kind of bullshit. And we're going to do a repass of chapter 34 here. But when we do this repass, we're going to try and read through the book as if we're doing a narration for an audiobook here. So audiobook narration is another thing where I have a little bit of experience with it. I've taken like a few classes, but I'm by no means an expert there. So always open to feedback, like if I'm going too slow, going too fast, if I mispronounce a word, if I have a lot of work to do on it, especially in nailing voices and sticking to voices. And I may opt to take some more classes. I told myself I would do the narration for like 30 days and get it consistent with the recording before I would spend more money on classes, because it's about $150 a class. But the classes I was taking were with an amazing audiobook recorder who has won Grammys for doing audiobooks, and she is like one of the better teachers that I've ever had the privilege to work with. Like like you have like a teacher where like you just understand immediately what they're trying to teach because their approach is the exact way that you learn. Yeah, I really think this woman is fantastic. Anyhow, let's begin. So this is Gravid by Zach ZYZ, chapter 34. Dying inside was the story of David Seelig, a neurotic mind reader who was slowly losing his powers. As Freya read the book, she could see why Randall had recommended it. The descriptions of telepathy were vivid and exciting. Oh, this is a place where my mom thought that we should fucking have a semicolon. Look at that. Semicolons are indeed for chumps. All right, begin again. As Freya read the book, she could see why Randall had recommended it. The descriptions of telepathy were vivid and exciting. The main character's perspective was unique and achingly real. Okay, we use Seelig a few places in this story, just on its own there. So I want to establish here the process of David Seelig being here. As Freya read the book, she could see why Randall had recommended it. The descriptions of telepathy were vivid and detailed, and Seelig's perspective was unique and achingly real. All right, well, shout-outs to Leroy1414. Thank you for your wishes of good luck. We doing it. I will bulldoze my way through this and just keep fucking doing it until I succeed, or until I don't succeed, because I really enjoy this process. But yeah, I appreciate everybody willing to like check this out on a Sunday morning. Y'all are some real ones there. Okay, let's take a look. She plowed. The descriptions of telepathy were vivid and detailed, and Selig's perspective was unique and achingly real. Freya plowed through Freya plowed through nearly 100 pages before the constant crushing sadness of the book began to get to her. Freya, oh, that's why we don't have... Oh, yeah, this should be she. Look at us making, like, changes and then taking them out there. Freya had a strange feeling of someone reading over her shoulder. A few times she looked around, expecting to find someone staring at her, but there was no one. The library was not very busy. It was mainly elderly people milling around computer terminals and reading the periodicals. Freya closed the book and began to type in a note, thinking she ought to go ahead and call a taxi home. Before she could finish it, she had a sudden uneasy feeling in her stomach. Before she could finish typing the note, she had a sudden uneasy feeling in her stomach. It seemed like the whole room had darkened a shade, and she wondered if something was up with the electricity. But no one else was looking up. It had to be something like the time she'd read The Stand, and every sniffle had her convinced she'd contracted the superflu. For months afterward, every sniffle had her convinced she'd contracted the superflu. Do you ever get that? Like, I don't know if this has happened to you guys, but like, definitely when I was reading The Strand and I like caught a cold or whatever, I'm like, what if I have it? It's just like when a book or something has you focusing on something, even though you know it's not for real, you can't help but wonder. Real talk. Oh, it's good coffee. But no one else was looking up. It had to be something like the time she'd read The Strand. Oh, yeah. But no one else was looking up. It was all in her head, just like when she'd read The Stand. For months afterward, every sniffle made her worry she'd contracted the superflu. Freya wondered if she should mention this to Dr. Garboglio. The downed feeling had swelled up around her out of nowhere. Before she could forget what she meant to write, Freya completed the note about how Selig reminded her of a cross between Professor Xavier and Woody Allen. I think Professor X is going to be more readable to somebody who might be like just have a passing interest in X-Men. Maybe she could before she could forget what she meant to write, Freya completed the note about how Selig reminded her of a cross between Professor X and Woody Allen. Maybe she could get a laugh from someone with that quip. But from who? Who was she taking these notes for anyway? She would never get to have that conversation. Randall was gone. Her father was gone. But from who? Who was she taking these notes for anyway? She would never get to have that conversation. Her father was gone. When would she stop forgetting that 100 times a day? 100 letdowns, 100 disappointments, 100 realizations that nothing would ever be okay again. She moved to leave. Yep. Freya moved to leave, and the feeling of a shadow pressing down on her returned until she sighed back into her seat. She didn't have anywhere to go. With a sigh, oh, yeah. Yeah. With a sigh, she flipped the book back open, finding her place. I like this line there, finding her place, in a situation where I think the reader is definitely wondering, like, is she fully in control of this situation right here? This is heavily like foreshadowed that her behavior is being influenced by an external force here. I hope so. It's definitely meant to be the case. The reader should definitely be like, what the fuck is going on with this girl? And if that's not apparent, then it's something that we'll definitely have to retool later on. With a sigh, she flipped the book back open, finding her place. Within a few pages, the heavy feeling passed, and she started to feel better. Though the book became increasingly miserable as it slumped to its conclusion, Freya found herself enjoying it more and more. At the end, her hands were trembling with excitement. Why do I feel like this? Silverberg was an even better writer than she'd thought. She couldn't remember the last time a book had affected her so physically. She took a deep breath, trying to center herself, and reflexively reached into her pocket for the star ball. It was hot. She took a deep breath, trying to center herself, and reflexively reached into her pocket for the star ball. It was hot. Not the usual distant warmth. Actually hot, like a stone that had been baking in the sun. Not hard enough to hurt, just enough that it couldn't possibly be her imagination. Freya glanced around the room. She glanced around the room, making sure no one was watching her. Freya drew the star ball out and stared at it, turning it over and over in her palm. Externally, it was the same. So why was it so hot? Externally, it was the same. Why was it so hot? She prodded the orb with her left index finger to confirm. It was definitely warmer than she'd ever felt before. Was the star ball trying to tell her something? Am I in danger? She asked under her breath, wondering if the orb was still trying to warn her. Freya glanced up, expecting the ceiling to be swallowed by the starless void, but everything was normal. Freya was now talking to her pet rock from outer space. She'd finally lost it. She looked down at her phone. Dr. Garbuglio should... She felt for her phone. Dr. Garbuglio had said she could call any time. Yeah, I think felt for is a little better there. She felt for her phone. Dr. Garbuglio had said he could call any time. Or she could call any time. Dr. Garbuglio had said she could call any time. But as she considered it, she could feel that sick feeling... Ooh, it's hard to say. Dr. Garbuglio had said she could call any time, but as she considered it, Freya could feel that sick feeling building in her stomach again. Yeah, I don't think we need the as she considered it. Dr. Garbuglio had said she could call any time, but Freya could feel that sick feeling building it. Oh my god. That sick feeling. Check 1, 2. All right, check. Okay. Dr. Garbuglio had said she could call any time, but Freya could feel turmoil building in her stomach again. It was a terrible idea, telling a psychiatrist any part of this would be... Oh, yeah. It was a terrible idea. Telling Dr. G any part of this would be a one-way ticket to a mental hospital. Lassa was gone. There would be no one to get her out. Freya stuck the phone back in her pocket, and the uneasy feeling began to abate. And the discomfort began to abate. She was starting to be very weirded out by these sudden shifts. It wasn't like her. Was this another side effect of the Lunestral withdrawal? Did the star ball getting hot have anything to do with it? Freya had no answers. At last, all she could think to do was pick up the copy of Dying Inside and walk it over to the returns desk. Maybe it was cursed and she'd feel better when she was rid of it. Too late, she realized she should have waited until the librarian's attention was elsewhere. Ah, not for you? The librarian asked, looking a little disappointed. Oh, no. I just really got into it. I just finished. Oh, no. I just finished it. There was a moment where the librarian was clearly wondering if that was possible, but then she glanced at the clock and nodded. I didn't realize it had gotten so late. You're a fast reader. What did you think? It's very stark. The mind. So in terms of the narration part of this here, really difficult for me is going to be to like find a consistent voice for each character and then to stick with it. And we're not talking about like doing like a full accent and like a full crazy voice, but you should be able to hear specifically like Freya sounds like this, Lynn Harris sounds like this. So what did they tell me in class? They said that one of their tricks was like finding a spot on your face where like a spot in your mouth that each character resides in. And Freya I see as being kind of like, it's very stark. The mind reading scenes were incredibly vivid, but the rest of the story was so bleak. The protagonist reminds me of a cross between Professor X and Woody Allen, but she's a little too low there to be a female character, so let's try to drill it down here. It's very stark. The mind reading scenes were incredibly vivid, but the rest of the story was so bleak. The protagonist reminds me of a cross between Professor X and Woody Allen. Okay, so they're like I'm trying to get closer to. There's not energy in her voice, right? A lot of it is sapped, and she's almost trying to like talk to you through saran wrap or something like that, because there's just a layer of sadness around her. And then Lynn Harris should come across as direct and maybe like a little butch sounding. Shout outs to lesbians. I think you've made the right choice. But not for you, the librarian asked, sounding a little disappointed. So where will we hit that? So she is like midway in the mouth, just sort of at the top of the roof of the mouth and like pushing forward with the tongue. Ah, not for you, the librarian asked, looking a little disappointed. I didn't realize that it had gotten so late. You're a fast reader. What did you think? Like you can see I need a lot of work on it, but I'm going to try to picture the location of the dialogue in my mind for each of these characters and work on it. Obviously, I need a ton of practice if I want to do voices, and I don't think you can just read voices like super flat. And it's not a good way to read an audiobook. It's very stark. The mind reading scenes were incredibly vivid, but the rest of the story was so bleak. The protagonist reminds me of a cross between Professor X and Woody Allen. Freya got her laugh after all, though the librarian covered her mouth, and she was very quick about it. Freya got her laugh after all, though the librarian covered her mouth, and she was quick about it. Oh, that's grand. You should write a review. It's been almost 20 years since I read it, but I can still remember the scene at the farm and some of his interactions with his sister. Judith, Freya reminded her. That's it. The part where she realizes Selig is reading her mind, so she floods his head with disgusting images. I'll never forget that. It's a really exceptional book. Have you read More Than Human? No. Is that another Silverberg? It's Theodore Sturgeon. It's about a psychic gestalt made up of runaways. It's a much different style, but very thought-provoking. Then, if you want a gestalt on a far grander scope, you might like Star Maker by Olaf Stapledon. It's incredible, like nothing else I've ever read. I'll add those to my list. Thank you. Freya had her phone out. She was tapping in recommendations. Oh, that's so clever. I should do that, the librarian said. I loved Never Let Me Go. It was just so haunting. Freya looked up, suddenly alarmed. The librarian could read upside down. She had been watching as Freya typed. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to intrude, she said, immediately realizing she'd overstepped. I get carried away talking about books. So I like that kind of like throatiness to the voice, but we're overselling it there. I would need to, in like a real reading of this, I would need to dial her back to about a quarter of the like rasp that we're putting in there. And I think we would, and I think Freya, we would also have to dial back like I'm probably dropping like half an octave too high for her, or raising half an octave too high for her. And like the number one thing that I don't like in an audiobook is where a man is reading a female like too high, and it sounds like unconvincing and grating there. And you can just see like this is something that with time and practice I'll be able to get decent at. But right now I can just feel I'm not good at this at all. And I'm we're gonna read through this entire book, and I'm gonna be struggling to get better. So yeah, like this is more convincing me of the need to take more classes, because I'm not there yet, and I want to be there. I want to if I'm gonna have to read my own books for people, I want it to be the best that they possibly can be. So yeah, this today has really convinced me. It's time to seek more tutelage and lessons there. I'm doing it. All right. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to intrude, she said. Oh, yeah. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to intrude, she said, immediately realizing she'd overstepped. I get carried away sometimes, talking about books. No, it's totally okay, Freya reassured her. You're Lynn Harris's sister, right? Yes, I'm Lee. Very nice to meet you. Lee extended a hand over the counter, and Freya reached out to shake it. She looked surprised to be recognized, but in a pleasant way. The familial resemblance was only there if you were really looking for it. I'm sorry I didn't recognize you at first. You've grown so much since the last time I saw you. Your dad was one of the biggest readers in town. He was such a good man. Freya caught a little twinge in the way that Lee said that, as if she thought most men weren't very good at all. I'm sorry for your loss, Lynn finished. Yeah, like we cannot do that character in that voice. That it's hard to put a tinge of gravel in like while trying to read an older woman, probably older than me by about 10 years. This is it, like this is hard, but I'm excited, like, because if I get good at this, I would be so much better at the other show. And I really, I just do not put in like the DJing practice or any kind of practice with the other show. I think most of what I would do is just play League of Legends all the time for like the past 10 years. But they deleted my favorite mode, so now I got all this time on my hands. Maybe I'll work on doing voices a little bit more, because it's fun too. It's fun to like practice something where you're just starting out and you're just dog shit at it. All right, let's try again. I'm sorry, I didn't recognize you at first. You've grown so much since... No, that's not it. I'm sorry, I didn't recognize you at first. You've grown so much since the last time I saw you. Your dad was one of the biggest readers in town. He was such a good man. All right, so there we're like giving some vocal fry to this character. I'm sorry I didn't recognize you at first. You've grown so much since the last time I saw you. No, that's awful. Forcing forward there, and just trying to do like a nudge higher than my normal register. I'm sorry I didn't... yeah, that's hard. I'm sorry I didn't recognize you at first. You've grown so much since the last time I saw you. Your dad was one of the biggest readers in town. He was such a good man. Freya caught a little twinge in the way... wait, where would the twinge actually be in reading this? You know, your dad was one of the biggest readers in town. He was such a good man. Yeah, I think the emphasis on such is the twinge there. Your dad was one of the biggest readers in town. He was such a good man. He was such a good man. Yeah, okay. Your dad was one of the biggest readers in town. He was such a good man. All right, we're talking a little too... So one of the big challenges of doing dialogue, right? When you're reading blocks of description, you have to go slow, right? Because the mind is like forming an image. It's trying to imagine these concepts, and like rushing along, it doesn't have time to do that. It'll just stop trying if you go too fast. In dialogue, you have to go at a normal conversational pace or it doesn't track, right? If a conversation doesn't flow like a conversation, the mind gets impatient trying to visualize what's happening and it starts filling in its own stuff. The whole thing collapses. So, so yeah, that's like a very difficult balance. And you can see me struggling to achieve it here while I'm trying to like nail this character's voice. The other part is like I found that when I nail like a voice, I have a hard time remembering it. Um, so maybe I'm just trying to think of strategies to nail one of these characters. What I might try to do is just like have a big sheet of dialogue from that character and only try to do that voice and try to like really nail it, like record myself doing it and rehearse it like for like 15 minutes or half an hour or something like that, just reading as that character until it like drills in. Because I have like a few character voices that I've done before where like I'm pretty good at consistently hitting them, just because I've done them a lot and I've rehearsed them. So maybe you need to do the same kind of research. But again, not an expert in this. It's okay. Thank you, Freya said quietly. She desperately wanted to escape. I'll check and see if those are on the shelves. Both of them were. They were both trade paperbacks in the Galance Science Fiction Masterwork series. All right, so I want to know how do we pronounce Galance. I think I'm pronouncing it right because I've heard... Okay, so I think, yeah, I just, yeah, hopefully I navigated the like, hey, I already have this thing that you sent me. Because it's so nice to send me a book. It really is. And it shows like support there, but I just, it's also kind of a dick move to be like, I already have that one, where you could just be like, oh, thank you, and then shut the fuck up and not tell someone. I did that. I did that same thing. Somebody got me a book for, I think, Christmas 2016. They got me a book that I already had, and I was just like, oh, thank you so much, and never let them know that I already had it. But it's probably like a superior move. But yeah, I like my mom. I don't want to bullshit her. You know what I'm saying? All right, where were we? So we're gonna try and pronounce Galance. How to pronounce Galance?
Galance.
Oh, I got it.
Galance.
Hell yeah! Shout outs to that right there. This pronunciation, like being able to just get the pronunciation for shit like that. That's fucking amazing. That's so good. Really happy about it. Okay, but let us continue real quick. All right, what am I showing here on our feed? Yeah, shout out to the people still watch. I'm sure that this is a little bit difficult to read through since I'm really like starting to try and get better at the narration here. So there are like a lot of pauses rather than like reading through the entire thing the way that we would want to be. But I feel like it's time to start doing some of that work. Both of them were. They were both trade. Oh yeah, this is. Uh. Freya found the books on the shelves. They were both trade paperbacks in the Galance Science Fiction Masterwork series. Freya checked them out and added them to her pile of... Freya checked them out and added them to her pile. Okay, so yeah, little known fact, actually. So I read a lot of the books that were mentioned here are part of those two books. I read both of them in London when I was like a very young man. Maybe I was like 18 or 19 years old and living in London with my much older girlfriend at the time, who was just a wonderful fucking woman, like one of the nicest people that I've ever met, and really deserved like a lot better than me and hopefully found it. But yeah. So I remember just reading these in like some scummy flat that we were like renting off of the gum tree or whatever, and just being blown away by More Than Human. Like, I haven't found a lot of Theodore Sturgeon's other work that has really resonated with me, but More Than Human is pretty incredible. Um, and then Star Maker, I can't say enough good about this. I just got a copy for my current girlfriend, who's like a big science fiction reader, and she like hopefully she's gonna take a stab at it because it's just amazing. The work is like very Victorian in its writing. It was written at the turn of the century. Olaf Stapleton was like an ambulance driver who in World War One, and he was just an avowed socialist and kept fighting for what he thought was right for his entire career. Really like a kind of a true believer in socialism, and like no commentary on whether socialism is a good idea or a bad idea or whatever. But I respect people who truly believe in a cause and devote their lives to it, even if like, let's sidestep the whole. Let's sidestep a little bit. Like socialism is a topic for another day or whatever, and I have like a lot to say about what I think about it. But I also am not an expert or whatever there. But yeah, whether you're socialist or, I mean, how much do you really want to say that? Am I going to say like somebody who like devoted their entire life to fascism is deserving of respect? Probably not there. So you can see that there's like qualifiers on that. But I do have tremendous respect for this guy. I think his accomplishment in science fiction was monumental. And I like that he went on to continue working for that goal for like a long time, because I think it is a lofty goal, if a somewhat unrealistic one. Mm. Freya found both of the books on the shelves. They were both trade paperbacks in this Gallant science fiction masterwork series. She checked them out and added them to her pile. Freya had been thinking she would go home and drop off her books before she went to the party, but now Freya had intended to return home and drop off her books before the party, but now she wasn't sure she would go out again if she went back to the house. She didn't know what the strange feeling was all about. Maybe there was something wrong with her. If she went straight to the party with a giant pile of books, the boys there would definitely make comments. Then she remembered that Dan had the fragile phoenix. She'd been pushing that problem out of her mind all day. She could just go home and not deal with any of it. She could text Dan and ask him to bring the book to school tomorrow. Now that he knew she was nuts, he'd probably be relieved that she didn't come. Then she thought it was even easier than that. She didn't even have to text Dan. She could tell Dr. Garboglio she lost her copy, and she could just tell Dr. Garboglio. She could text Dan and ask him to bring the book to school tomorrow. Now that he knew she was nuts, he'd probably be relieved if she didn't come. He'd probably be relieved if Freya didn't come. Then she thought it was even easier than that. She didn't even have to text Dan. She could just tell Dr. Garboglio she'd lost her copy. He had a whole shelf of them. She never had to talk to Dan Gregulis again. Take a chance. Okay, so this thing here, I think at one point in the chapter about take a chance, I tried to relate it to this old TV series called Space Above and Beyond. And it's just too obscure or whatever. But in Space Above and Beyond, there is a race of androids that fought a war against humanity. And the justification for the androids fighting that war was like a rogue programmer got in and added a single line of code to like the master repo or whatever the hell that all the androids ran off of. And that line of code was take a chance. and like all the androids are depicted as being obsessed with gambling in this series. I loved that. I thought it was so cool. I thought it was like a really neat justification for an AI uprising, just like this single take a chance line of code. So I tried to relate that into this book, but it was just too unwieldy. So that got cut out. But now you guys know, even if readers will never know what I intended. So yeah, like shout outs to watching the live editing stream because you get to see shit nobody else gets to see ever, which I think is kind of cool. I like it. You know, I'm a big fan of that whole situation right there. Hopefully you are too. Take a chance. Freya didn't have to go home and hide. She could just suck it up. Oh, that doesn't sound good, right? But yeah, so that maybe we should change that sentence, but I don't have immediately a good alternative. Freya didn't have to go home and hide. She could just suck it up. Maybe Dan hadn't even opened the book. Maybe he didn't give a shit. Maybe it didn't matter either way, and she just wanted to hang out with a bunch of guys and watch men in a cage beat each other half to death. She looked at her stack of books and wished she had a grocery bag or something to hide them in. It dawned on Freya that she could get a grocery bag at the grocery store. She could show up with some food and everyone would be happy to see her. She thought she might never eat again after breakfast, but that was a whole novel ago. She was already getting hungry. If people were busy eating, they wouldn't have time to notice she was awkward as hell. She waved goodbye to Lee Harris and set off for the supermarket. Okay, cool. So yeah, like this will be an easy chapter to edit here. Chapter 33, Starball. Eureka! So I'll tell you one of the comments for this right here, because I'm probably going to wind up doing my own graphic design for this book. I leave comments for myself about what I want to do with the typesetting. And so here I have a note. This is the word Eureka in a burst of alternating black and white rays, taking up the whole page with a blank orb at the center. So you can look at it as kind of like the flag of Imperial Japan. Shout outs to Tojo. Let's take a look at what. Yeah, see this this flag right here. So kind of like this, but reversed, with the white at the center, where it just says Eureka, and maybe we'll have the word Eureka just slightly inflated or whatever to give the idea of roundness or whatever. Yeah, I'm a fan of this idea, but we'll have to see. Shout out, like, you know, like. I think so. Japan's got a good flag, right? The round white flag, but honestly, this one was so much more dope. It's a shame they had to get rid of it. But yeah, like Japan, probably top tier as far as flags go. I'm just gonna admit. Hold on, is there a tier list of world flags? I think we all have to agree. Okay, so world flags tier list. What do we have? So S tier. This is fucking bullshit right there. The leaf, a fucking leaf for S tier? No, ridiculous. So we got South Korea on top. I think South Korea pretty solid right there. Then we got, all right, the Union Jack, I got to give it to him. What country is this fucking, I don't, it's like Lithuania or something like that. Oh, and this dragon is pretty dope. You can tell I don't spend like any time at all on pole because I don't recognize like the double eagle or the dragon. All right, here. And they got the American flag as S tier. Fuck out of here with that bullshit. I think this is like Barbados or something like this. The triple thing. I would definitely put Japan's flag in the S tier. And what's that? The flag of Tibet right there? Oh my God. I'm typical American. But yeah, all these other flags are kind of bullshit. I like the Finnish flag. And like the sun rising over. That's like a pretty decent flag. The Argentina flag, you know, whatever. Ooh, I like this triangular. See, you should be able to click on these motherfuckers and see what they are. All right, but yeah, definitely this thing is wrong, and Japan's flag is S tier. I'm just putting it out there. And Norway, they can fuck off. Freaking Euro Mexico. No, shout outs to Norway. I love a lot of Norwegians. But your flag has to go. D tier. We have like a lot of these loser flags right here. Well, oh shit, Ghana. You got fucked up in the D tier. All right. Well, I'm glad that we have a world flag tier list right there. That's super interesting right there. Okay, so let me take like 5. I'm gonna blow my nose, and then we'll return, and we're gonna work on chapter. Actually, hold on. Let's make sure that our chapter numbers are right. Yeah, so this should actually be chapter 35. I don't know how we got off by 2 fucking chapters, man, but it's gonna be a pain in the ass for the entire book. So this is chapter 35. It's not really a chapter, but yeah, it was very easy to write. And then chapter 36 is going to be sort of her hanging out with Dan Gregulis and watching MMA with some other surprising people there. So let me return in a second. All right. Well, look at that. That wasn't even 3 fucking minutes. I'm glad that I'm not having to rest my eyes as much when I'm doing this. I don't know if I have adapted to this level of lighting or whatever, or if my eyes are just doing a little bit better. Yeah, definitely been having, like some of y'all know that I had to get a bunch of MRIs for like what I was like worried was a tumor or something. It turned out to be nothing. It might be like the early stages of MS. Hopefully not. But that was like a year or so ago, and I have like intermittent eye pain that's not like the end of the world. It's just kind of a pain in the ass. And yeah, it seems to be like somewhat seasonal, maybe associated with some kind of allergies or something like that. I keep like dropping things out of my diet, trying to figure out what it is or whatever. Like my recent theory is that it's like something gout related, and maybe asparagus is the culprit. But I don't know if I can know or whatever there. But yeah, sometimes that'll be going on at the back of my mind. If that gets real bad, I just tend to like fucking go to sleep for the day. Yeah, something real enervating about pain behind your eyes because your body associates it with like a sleep reflex. But yeah, I'm not gonna let some bullshit pain stop me from doing the stream. I'm out here every day, no matter what. And I try not to tell other people about it for the most part there because, like if you don't think about something, it won't be as big of a deal. Look at me breaking my own goddamn rule here. All right. So now we're into the phase where I have not read chapter 36 in a long time. And I definitely have not edited this. So there's going to be more of a line by line editing type thing. And yeah, I'm already thinking about making breakfast. Holler out there. I think I'm going to make steak and eggs for breakfast. Oh, fuck. I left behind my new hot sauce at my girl's house. So I'm going to have to make it without that. I got other hot sauce. I can fuck around with it there. But yeah. So I'm going to make steak and eggs in a little bit here. Let me know if you're going to make anything crazy for breakfast this morning. Because the chat is like shuffled off this mortal coil and I'm fucking lonely. But shout out to anybody watching at this point right there. Sometimes this is just how it is, man. People got other shit going on. And also, I think that was kind of a tough ask for that last chapter right there. I'm going to try and do more practice on narrating. Like I might try and, if I really get it together, I would like to try and do like a recording of survival mode And I might just have to resign myself to the fact that we're going to do a recording of survival mode, and it's not going to be as good as it could be, and I might re-record it later because I've just been putting it off for so long. And I think like I'm at the point where having something out there would be so much better than not having anything. So chapter 36. 5 minutes after arriving, yeah, this is not. Freya couldn't believe she'd spent all day worrying about the party. Everything was fine. Dan didn't mention the book at all. She'd only brought $20 worth of chips and soda, but when she arrived, she felt like she was resupplying a castle after a siege. No, let's do fortress here. Because we use castle at the start of the thing, and just for like I like the word fortress. I like to trot it out there. And the what is it? The Queens of the Stone Age album, Villains or whatever, from last year or the year before or whatever. One of my favorite songs on it is one called Fortress or whatever. It's a dope song. Yeah, that album totally worth a listen. By the way, if you are a Queens of the Stone Age fan. It's different than some of their other work, but I like what they're going with it. They're getting a little pussy in their old age, but I mean, so am I. So Freya couldn't believe she'd spent all morning worrying about the party. Everything was fine. Dan didn't mention the book at all. She only brought $20 worth of chips and soda, but when she arrived, she felt like she was resupplying a fortress after a siege. She got the feeling no one had really expected her to show up, and they seemed happy she had. For some reason, she'd thought there would be like 20 people there, but there weren't even 10. For some reason, she'd thought there would be like 20 people there, but there weren't even 10. She already knew everyone except for Brad Klein. He had curly red hair and was so pale and freckled, she thought he might... I think this is a little much right here. Brad had curly red hair and was so pale and freckled she thought he might burst into flames if a wayward sunbeam hit him. He was funny, but it was a biting wit. When he wasn't talking to... Brad had curly red hair, and he was so pale and freckled, she thought he might burst in... Brad had curly red hair, and he was so pale and freckled, Freya thought he might burst into flames if a wayward sunbeam hit him. He was funny, but it was a biting wit. When he wasn't joking, his face was cold and serious, like Radimir's. Brad was polite, but not friendly... Okay, cool. That is a lot of description for... We got like a whole paragraph on this guy. I don't know that readers will buy the like bursting into flames line, but yeah, it's interesting enough. Brad had curly red hair, and he was so pale and freckled, Freya thought he might burst into flames if a wayward sunbeam hit him. Let's take out freckled. Oh, also, so like, here's one consideration that so Brad Klein is like the only Jewish character in this book, and we've sort of called him a vampire with this line right here. So we're sort of implying that, and like, if you don't know, there has been a long, like, sort of anti-Semitic trope that Jews drink blood, that they're like blood drinkers. It's like back in like the Middle Ages, people accused them of drinking blood and stealing babies and poisoning wells. That was just like one of the things that they would trot around when people wanted to, have a pogrom and take all their stuff, so they didn't have to pay their TEDs. So, yeah, like that's not where I was going with this. I just, I think I wanted to like diss gingers here, but we just got to be cognizant of that. That's something an editor might make us take out, but just later on, if people are trying to paint me as anti-Jew as a result of that, that's not where I'm going. But I'm like realizing that the association is there. Ridiculous. Brad had curly red hair. Brad Klein had curly red hair and a ton of freckles. Here, yeah, we don't need it. Brad Klein had freckles and curly red hair. He was so pale, Freya thought he might burst into flames if a wayward sun might. Hmm. Yeah, let's try to salvage that sunbeam explosion thing. Mm-hmm. Mm. Mm. Brad Klein was an intense senior with freckles and curly red hair. He was the palest kid in Silas. He was the palest student at Grayson and felt like he might burst into flames if struck by a wayward sunbeam. He was funny, but it was a biting wit. When he wasn't joking, his face was cold and serious, like Radimir's. Brad was a polite host, but not overly friendly to Freya, which she liked. She could tell he needed to warm up to someone before he was nice to them. I like it. That's better. That's better. Like, I buy this a little bit more. Oh, shout outs to FNet News. It looks like they're going to, at some point, release a Best of the Year award. I wonder if I'll like win an award in earnest, or if they'll all be like joke awards. I would love to just say that I have an award-winning show every time that I spam it. So hopefully will win one for, like, I don't know, most uses of double N-word or whatever the fuck, crazy shit. I have no idea what to expect from this. I didn't submit any entries myself, which I should have. I've just been so busy with this stream. I have not been able to give what is due to FNet News, and we should definitely sort that out. Besides Dan and Brad, there were Cameron Kurowski and Tate Green from Krav Maga. Freya was surprised to find Radomir Stitch was there. Besides Dan and Brad, there were Cameron Kurowski and Tate Green from Krav Maga. Freya was surprised to find Radomir Stitch was there. She wondered who he was friends with in this group. He seemed just as surprised to see her, but she couldn't tell if he was happy about it or not. She noticed he didn't eat any of the chips she'd brought and drank water instead of soda. The others were not so restrained. She'd been worried that she was overdoing it, bringing so much stuff, but soon she was pretty certain. The others were not so restrained. Freya had been worried she'd been overdoing it. Freya had worried a little she was overdoing it. The others were not so restrained. Freya had worried a little she was overdoing it, but it looked like the snacks she'd brought wouldn't even survive prelims. Brad Klein's basement was a great spot to watch the fights. There was a big sectional couch that made a U around a 100-inch television. Brad's father did something with designing sound for concerts in New York, and there was a Sirius speaker system. She could feel the pulse of the subwoofers through the leather couch. Everyone seemed a little toned down during the first fight. She wondered if they felt uncomfortable around her. The second fight was terrible. It was a heavyweight bout, and both fighters got gassed in the second round. The rest of the fight was just the two fighters hugging it out. The referee even threatened to take points for not engaging. Freya stuck out her tongue and pretended to snore, and that was the signal for everyone to go in. Each of them started trying to outdo each other, jeering the screen. Cameron Kowalski and Dan Gregulis were the best at it. They started doing falsetto voices for the lackluster fighters as they grappled and tried to get the other to the ground. They started doing falsetto voices for the lackluster fighters as the men on screen grappled ineffectively. "Take me, Surus, right here in this octagon," Cameron mocked. "No, Antonio. No one must know of our forbidden love. Stop this clumsy armbar attempt." "Only if you'll release the rear naked choke on my heart," Cameron cried back. That's way too much. That's way too deep in the cut right there. Let's try that again. Well, no, we're not doing the narration, but "No, Antonio. No one must know of our forbidden love. Stop this clumsy armbar attempt. Only if you'll release your rear naked choke on my heart." Let's do exaggerated rather than falsetto. "Take me now, Surus, right here in this octagon," Cameron mocked. "No, Antonio. No one must know." No, see, that's the same voice. "Take me now, Surus, right here in this octagon," Cameron mocked. "No, Antonio. No one must know of our forbidden love. Stop this clumsy armbar attempt." "Only if you'll release your rear naked choke on my heart," Cameron cried back, clutching his chest. "Kiss me, you fool. Don't let him tear us apart," Dan clowned, as the referee separated the exhausted men for the third time. They were ridiculous. Freya couldn't keep from cracking up. Dan caught her eye for a moment and then grinned at her. Her cheeks got hot, and she turned back to the screen, just as the referee was lifting Surus's arm. Brad Klein groaned that they should have both lost, and Freya joined the rumble of agreement. So yeah, we just kind of glossed over that there. But here is this dude smiling at her, and her cheeks get hot, and she turned back to the screen. She's like embarrassed there. That's a big moment, right? Previously, we don't get like much of the "I'm interested in you," and this is a spot where I think it's a little bit manifest there. Her cheeks got hot, and she turned back to the screen, just as the referee was lifting Surus's arm. Brad Klein groaned that they should have both lost, and Freya joined the rumble of agreement. More of the preliminary fights went by, and Freya began to be really glad she'd come. More of the preliminary fights went by, and Freya began to be very glad she'd come. When she asked why a referee was warning a fighter about an elbow, Tate explained the rule against 12-6 elbow strikes, which everyone seemed to be... Tate explained the rule against 12 o'clock to 6 elbow strikes. Oh, yeah, let's just do 12-6. When she asked why a referee was warning a fighter about an elbow, Tate explained the rule against 12-6 elbow strikes, which everyone seemed to agree was bullshit. She tried not to ask too many questions. She'd been afraid the action would be hard to follow, but it was pretty easy, even with the boys drowning out the commentators. They all got excited whenever they saw a technique from class. One of the fighters on the main card was an Israeli woman who Vitko had told them to watch out for. Just when she was starting to feel really comfortable, a car drove up and 3 girls joined them. Claire Meadows had driven over with Jeanette Lewis, the captain of the lacrosse team, and Riley Housty, the goalie. Riley had dyed her hair... Oh my God. All right, so let's... Just when Freya was starting to feel really comfortable, a car drove up and 3 girls joined them. Claire Meadows had driven over with Jeanette Lewis, the captain of the lacrosse team, and Riley Hallis, their goalie. Claire Meadows had driven over with Jeanette Lewis, the captain of the lacrosse team, and Riley Halstead, who was the goalie. Riley had her hair dyed electric blue on one side of her part and hot pink on the other. Claire gave Freya a quick nod when she noticed her, and the room quickly became a roar of chatter with 3 conversations going on at once. Claire beelined to a spot between... Claire beelined to a spot beside Freya. "Shove over," she ordered Tate, who was sitting beside Freya. For a second, Freya hoped he'd tell her to fuck off, but he just tilted his head with his mouth open and his palms raised, as if to say, "Are you seeing this?" "Shove over," she ordered Tate, who was sitting beside Freya. Hold on, this paragraph. Let's see if we can tighten this any. Just when Freya was starting to feel really comfortable, a car drove up and 3 girls joined them. Claire Meadows had driven over with Jeanette Lewis, the captain of the lacrosse team, and Riley Halstead, who was the goalie. Riley had her hair dyed electric blue on one side of her part and hot pink on the other. Claire gave Freya a quick nod when she noticed her, and the room quickly became a roar of chatter with 3 conversations going on at once. Claire gave Freya a quick nod when she noticed her, and after everyone greeted each other, the room quickly became a roar of chatter with 3 conversations going on at once. Claire beelined to a spot beside Freya. "Shove over," she ordered Tate, who was sitting beside Freya. For a second, Freya hoped he'd tell her to fuck off. Yeah. Okay, so when we have this like cluster of now there are a lot of things going on here, and in general, like we're gonna relax the amount of pronouns that we're gonna use. Right? Oh shit, Matty Owens is talking in hip hop chat. I haven't seen him in there for a while there. Yeah, discord.gg/hip hop. Shout outs to these people. Mm. Mm. All right, what do we got here? Shove over, Claire ordered Tate. Shove over, Claire ordered Tate, who was sitting beside Freya. For a second, Freya hoped Tate would tell Claire to fuck off. Instead, Tate raised it. Instead, he raised his palms at the group, as if to say, "Are you seeing this?" and scooted over. Instead, he raised his palms at the group, as if to say, "Are you seeing this?" and scooted over in complete capitulation. A few people chuckled, but Freya wondered why he hadn't stood up for himself. Freya wondered why he hadn't stood up for himself. She was enjoying chatting with him. While the others were mostly just clowning, Tate had a good eye for the technical aspects of the fights. He called out a lot of dirty moves fighters were getting away with before the announcers did, and he was pretty good at predicting how the judges scored each round. "We're cousins. I get to give him shit," Claire explained, noticing Freya's look. "Did you get in trouble the other day?" "No, he never said anything. Total softy," Freya said, using the same word. Yeah, so now, unfortunately, we have to go back to... because I think we made changes to the Forelli chapter. So now we have to make sure that we didn't cut that word. Yeah, so cool. Fortunately, we get there. Yeah. He's a softie. Okay. Okay, cool. "We're cousins. I get to give him shit," Claire explained, noticing Freya's look. "Did you get in trouble the other day?" "No, he never said anything. Total softy," Freya said, using the same word Claire had. Claire had an "I told you so" smile. Freya noticed that she had a very intense focus when... "No, he never said anything. Total softy," Freya said, remembering she'd used that term. Claire had an "I told you so" smile. Freya noticed that Claire had a very intense focus when she was talking to someone, like she was shutting out everything else. "What happened?" Tate asked. "Nothing. Hush," Claire shot back, looking annoyed. "I had to duck into a bathroom to escape Mr. Forelli before he could talk me to death," Freya explained, tilting her head around Claire to talk to Tate. She didn't like the way Claire was walling him off. "Oh my God. I had him last year. He never shuts up," Riley shot back. Riley shot in. "Oh my God. I had him last year. He never shuts up," Riley shot in from the other couch. Suddenly everyone was echoing in agreement. Another fight had started up on the TV, and everyone turned back to it. Claire had never seen MMA before, and she wasn't shy about asking questions. Tate mostly filled her in, and Freya was struck by how differently he spoke. He treated Claire like she was a complete idiot for not knowing, and she teased him right back. A few times the others broke out laughing at them. It made Freya wonder if this was the real Tate. It made her wonder if this was the real Tate, and he'd just been nice to Freya because he felt sorry for her. All the chips had been wiped out. Jeanette was poking at a bag that was just salt and pretzel dust. "Does anyone want to order pizza or something?" she asked. "Yes. I'm hungry." "Yes, that would be amazing. I'm hungry," Freya answered her. "Pizza would be incredible. I'm hungry," Freya answered. "How's that even possible?" Dan asked. "You ate like an entire cow this morning." "Did you just call her a cow?" Clara spun towards Dan. "I didn't say that," Dan protested. People were turning away from the fight on the TV to watch the one brewing on the sofa. "She ate the biggest steak I've ever seen." She ate the biggest steak I've ever seen steak at the diner this morning? She ate the biggest steak I've ever seen at the diner this morning. That's all. "Oh, so she can't eat what she wants?" "I didn't say that. I was impressed, actually. Eating breakfast is impressive to you?" "Jesus, Claire. Lighten up," Dan trailed, shaking his head, but she kept glaring at him. "By about 30 pounds, he finished, mugging her with an open-mouthed grin. "Oh, shit," Cameron cried, and Dan had already flipped over the back of the couch to escape. Claire was on her feet and running after him. "Outside," Brad Klein shouted, and Brad darted around the sectional and wrenched the back door open. Dan darted around the sectional and wrenched the back door open, darting up the steps and into the yard. Claire was hurtling after him. She nearly had him as he paused at the door, but soon he was out in the open, and she had no hope of ever catching him. It didn't keep her from trying. They could see 2 sets of legs running past in the windows ringing the basement, all around and around the house. Dan kept slowing to a trot and letting her almost catch up before she took off again. "Maybe you could catch me if you weren't so fat," they heard him call back through the basement door, and she howled at him, so mad she couldn't even make words, and puffed after him. "If she ran like that at practice, we'd win more games," Jeanette observed, and Riley started cackling. Freya noticed her eyes go to Radmir to see if he was laughing, but of course he wasn't. She winced in sympathy. "Can you get her to shut up before the neighbors call the police?" "Can you get her to shut up before the neighbors call the police?" Brad Klein asked Jeanette. He sounded annoyed. They heard the howl rounding the house again. Claire ran past the open door. Her face was almost completely red. "Sounds like they might call animal control instead," Tate quipped, and Cameron and Riley roared with laughter until Dan ran down the steps to join them. He wasn't even winded, but he looked uneasy. "She just jumped in her car," he said. For a moment, everyone was looking around out the window, afraid she was about to ram the house. But instead, they heard an engine roaring, and then it faded away. "Wait, did she just fucking drive off?" Jeanette asked, standing on her toes to see out the window. "She was our ride. Why do you have to be such an asshole, Dan?" "She started that. She's been mad at me for like 2 months. I don't even know why." Freya was about to blurt something out, but she was glad she didn't. "Maybe she will come back," Radmir offered. "She won't," Tate said, and Jeanette and Riley were both nodding in agreement. "I can cover her share of the pay-per-view," Dan offered. "I got it." "Don't worry," Brad said, sighing at him. Dan gave him an apologetic look. "That old Gregulus charm," Dameron teased. "Seriously, though, are we getting pizza?" "I'll text her I'm sorry, okay?" Dan offered, ignoring Cameron. God, don't. You'll just make things worse. Just give us a ride home later, Jeanette said. You live all the way in Fairmont, Dan complained. Next time, think before you open your big dumb mouth, Jeanette said. Oh, yeah, this is a sing-song voice. Next time, think before you open your big dumb mouth, Jeanette said in a sing-song voice. I don't like that part. Yeah, let's check out that sing-song thing. Can your car even make it to Fairmont? Brad Klein asked, grinning. I bet he doesn't even have enough gas to get to the end of the block, Riley chimed in. See, this is why I don't like hanging out with lacrosse girls. They gang up on you. Oh, yeah. See, this is why I don't like hanging out with you lacrosse girls. See, this is why I don't like hanging out with lacrosse girls. They gang up on you, Dan said, rolling his eyes at Riley. They can gang up on me anytime they want, Cameron offered. Ooh, both Riley and Jeanette offered in unison, and Cameron stood up and swept into a deep bow. Freya was just sitting there watching it all happen. How did they do it? Everyone seemed to know everyone. Everyone was so witty. It was just effortless to them. Except for Radomir, and he didn't have to be funny. He was a genius. But what was she? Freya felt completely superfluous. If she wasn't there... Freya was sitting there watching it all happen. How did they do it? Everyone seemed to know everyone. Everyone was so witty. It was just effortless to them. Except for Radomir, and he didn't have to be funny. He was a genius. But what was she? Freya felt completely superfluous. Worse than that, if she wasn't here, the drama never would have happened. She wondered if she should just go, her hand thrust into her pocket and closed on the star ball. Seriously, I totally wasn't calling you a cow. I'm sorry, Dan said, seeming a little crestfallen. He was doing that thing where someone does something rude and then they overcompensate by being too nice to everyone else. She got the idea this wasn't the first time Claire had made a scene like this. It's not a big deal. I don't know why she was being a bitch on my behalf, Freya said. I've been running every night. I get really hungry in the morning. What? 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 When did you start running? Are you going to try out for track in the spring? We have a really good crew for cross country this fall. Dan had the same sudden gleam of interest that Radomir did when people brought up dancing. Dance. What? When did you start running? Are you going to try out for track this spring? We have a really good crew for cross country this fall. Words were tumbling out of Dan's mouth. He had the same sudden gleam of interest that Radomir did when people brought up dance. No, I'm just Vico told me to try it. I have insomnia. He said to keep running until I was tired. Does that work? So far, yeah. He's pretty smart. I don't know what he's doing here. He's way too good for this town. He could have like a whole giant school in New York City. I bet he's spying on Hidden Kernu for Israel, Cameron said. No, dummy. His wife works there. Tate rolled his eyes. I bet she's spying on Hidden Kernu for Israel, Cameron amended. Nobody is spying for Israel, except Brad. Oh, fuck off, Brad groaned. I don't even like it there. My dad is trying to get me to go to Birthright this summer. I want to go back to New Zealand instead. What's it like there? Jeanette asked. Oh, it's awesome. There are two main islands. The north is full of people, and the south is super rugged and beautiful, Brad began. Pizza, 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 pizza. Cameron kept repeating it until everyone could no longer ignore him. They gathered cash for pizza. Freya wanted to kick in, but they wouldn't let her because she'd brought stuff. The prelims ended, and they swapped over to pay-per-view for the main event. Okay, let's reflect on this chapter right here. What do we have? This may get like another rework or something like that. There's a lot going on here. It's a lot of dialogue. This is a long chapter. And I feel like what I've probably done here is written something that doesn't sound especially like a bunch of 18 and 19-year-olds. Or like the ages here range from like maybe 15 to 19. And I think we haven't really written a group that sounds like it, but I don't know. I kind of like how this dialogue goes. We're spending a lot of time on this chapter. Maybe some trimming would be appropriate, or like breaking up into sections or something like that. Where let's see how long this is. So this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah, so around there, that's where we would break. Like we could do a chapter break here. I wonder how long this goes before we break for a chapter. Oh yeah, this is like. Oh, okay, yeah, all right. We do have a decent chapter break coming up. The prelims ended and they swapped over to pay-per-view for the main event. It turned into The conversation turned into Brad and Jeanette talking about New Zealand across Radomir, while Dan and Cameron were trying their hardest to recruit Freya onto the track team. She just couldn't understand why people cared who ran faster than who, but at least they were excited about it. They were both funny. They were both really funny. She wondered why Dan wasn't in drama this year, but she couldn't really ask because she wasn't, since she was, okay. The conversation turned into Brad and Jeanette talking about New Zealand across Radomir, while Dan and Cameron were trying their hardest to recruit Freya onto the track team. She just couldn't understand why people cared who ran faster than who, but at least they were excited about it. They were both really funny, and she wondered why Dan wasn't in drama this year, but she couldn't ask them since she wasn't either. Finally, the fights for pay-per-view started, and everyone's excitement ratcheted up. The first fight was the number 3 and number 5 men's lightweight contenders. Since the number 2 guy was injured, whoever... Oh. Finally, the fights for pay-per-view started. Everyone's excitement ratcheted up. The first fight was the number 3 and number 5 men's lightweight contenders. The number 2 guy was injured. Whoever won this would get a shot at the title. It was nothing like the fights that had come before. This fight was nothing like the ones before. The 2 men launched themselves at each other from the first moment, darting in and out, weaving and dodging. There were more punches thrown in the first 30 seconds than there had been in the entire heavyweight fight. It was almost difficult to follow the action or tell who was winning. The punches seemed to have no impact. Freya glanced around the room and saw everyone's eyes darting at the screen, the television gleaming in their eyes. Okay, hold up. Almost there. Freya glanced around the room and saw everyone's eyes darting at the screen, the television gleaming in their eyes. Radomir was practically transfixed. His jaw dropped as everyone began to roar with excitement. When she looked back to the screen, the fight was over. In the replay, she watched the number 3 fighter feint a kick, and then when the other fighter raised his leg to check it, he leapt up and cracked him with a flying knee, knocking him out cold. The doctors were swarming into the ring as number 3's team rushed in cheering, and he climbed onto the cage and raised his fist to the crowd as sweat rained off him. Okay. Doctors were swarming into the ring as number 3's team rushed in cheering.
His footwork is so much better than the other fighter. Everything he does comes from his legs, Radomir said, looking slightly awed. He was a kickboxer before he came to MMA, Tate said. This is going to be a good card. First round, flying knee knockout. The second fight was even better. It was a women's strawweight fight with Flavia Milovets, the Israeli fighter Vitko had told him to look out for. She was fighting former champion Rita Blazek. This fight had much less striking. Milovets was primarily a grappler. She threw a few kicks to keep Blazek guessing, but mostly she was looking for a way in. All of her takedown attempts in the first round were stuffed, and Blazek made her pay for all of them. Just before the closing bell, she caught Milovets with a left hook that opened up a big cut on her cheekbone. Midway through the second round, she was bleeding so much they called in the doctor. The doctor scrutinized Milovets for only a few moments before announcing the fight could go on, and between rounds they were slathering globs of Vaseline on the cut. The fight continued to the third round, and Tate was certain she'd lost the first 2 rounds, but told him Blazek needed to watch out, because anything could happen in the third. Blazek looked tired, and Blazek was looking tired. Milovets had wobbled her with an elbow to the temple in a failed takedown. Almost immediately after the start of the first round, Milovets caught an ill-timed kick and drove Blazek across the cage as she hopped on one foot trying to stay upright. Finally, she collapsed, and Milovets seized her moment, locking her up and getting her back. There was a moment where the camera was focused on both of their faces as blood dripped off Milovets' face onto the back of Blazek's head. Blazek had both of her hands trying to wrench the arm snaking around her neck free, but she didn't have the strength to stop it. With horrid fascination, they all watched Milovets crank down on her neck, her eyes aflame with flurry as Blazek's eyes were rolling with desperation. She should tap. She should tap, Tate said, his voice cracking with excitement. The referee rushed in to separate them, but Blazek was unconscious. For a moment, Milovets was looming over her hands clenched into claws, looking like she wanted to finish what she'd started. But then the spell broke. She looked around, seeming almost surprised at the lights and noise surrounding her. The referee was moving her back towards her corner. The doctor was in the cage again, and a hush fell over the crowd. Milovets fell to her knees as they waited to see if Blazek would come around. She almost looks like another person, Dan breathed. There was none of the jubilation for the first fight in Milovets' expression. Pale blue eyes stared out from under a mask of blood. Finally, Blazek came around, but it was a while before she could get up, and she couldn't walk out of the cage without assistance. Why did they let it go on for that long? Jeanette asked. She sounded a little shaken. The ref was right there. It wasn't his fault. Blazek should have tapped, Tate said. They're never the same after they get knocked out like that. They all stared at the screen. The camera kept focusing on Milovets' haunted expression. The announcers were talking about the fight in subdued, almost somber tone. Freya looked around the room, fascinated by how people are taking it. Tate's face was tight with sadness. He had been rooting for Blazek. Dan and Cameron both looked a bit shaken. For once, they weren't joking. Jeanette and Riley both had queasy expressions. Only Radomir seemed fully awake. He watched the screen with wide-open eyes, electrified by the brush with death. He caught her eye for a moment and looked away. He caught her eye for a moment and glanced away, looking a little like he'd been caught. 30 years of darkness. So that's kind of cool. That is a long-ass chapter. Probably we go way too deep on the description of MMA there. We're probably boring readers at that point, especially readers who might not give a shit about MMA. Okay, but we've been streaming for a hot second here. I wish I had like a countdown of how long we've been streaming here. But yeah, so we got through that chapter. I'd say like we probably need a second pass, kind of similar to the way that we did this other one. So let's scroll back up to the start of this chapter, and we'll try to do a read through of chapter 36. And when we come back, I'll probably do a second editing stream later today, because I'm like a little worn out now, but I feel like I'm gonna rally in a little bit, maybe after breakfast. So yeah, real talk. Thank you to everybody who joined in here. Really enjoy doing these editing streams every morning. As always, if you enjoy it, I would love to have a subscription on YouTube. Just search for ZachZYZ on YouTube. We're trying to get that custom URL and make my goddamn day. And you can see all this stuff on my website, ZachZYZ.com. We post all the chapters and the differences between them and the videos and everything. And you can follow me on Twitter if you want to have this thing beamed at you at Twitter every day. I'm not too active on Twitter. The radio show Twitter is the one that has all my funny hijinks and shit on it, but it's super offensive to everybody. Okay, and yeah, have a happy Sunday. If I can do this every morning, you can do whatever you want to do in this world. I guarantee it. Just keep plugging away at it, and eventually it will work or you will die. Good luck.